Welcome to the Radical Responsibility Revolution podcast. This is where we are transforming lives, inspiring you to reclaim your health, your wealth, and the power of your mind. Here we share actionable insights, inviting you to turn inwards and design your life of purpose and abundance. So this is a special Christmas episode of Radical Responsibility Revolution. And I'm going to just start saying right out of the gate, I don't have any makeup on. I didn't get dressed. I cried the entire time I was writing the notes to create this because it's a very emotional time, the holidays. I'm sure you all know that. But here's the thing, crying is dignified. Oprah called it the ugly cry, but I don't believe in that because all crying is just a release. It's not the happy, joyous crying, it's the deep, emotional crying that is going to the depths of my soul. And it's that kind of crying where your chest tightens and you're like, why am I crying exactly? Because I don't really know, other than to say that this is a deep, deep calling for me to share what I'm going to share. And it will either resonate with you or it won't. And I was hoping not to cry, but I knew it wasn't going to happen. So I'm just going to cry through it. And you have to be okay with that or just turn it off. It doesn't matter. We're just going to let that be. And I didn't realize how much Christmas was bringing things up for me, but it isn't about Christmas. And I want to share that really clearly as I move through this because at 70, I've had 70 Christmases. And honestly, that alone feels important to say because there's so many people that were born after that haven't experienced the same things on the planet that I have for 70 years. And this episode is certainly not polished, I will tell you that. It's not going to be linear. It may be all over the map. It's probably going to wander around a lot, but it feels honest. And it's about Christmas, what it used to be, what it's become, what it is today, and what is actually underneath all of the noise of Christmas. And I'm talking about the Christmas that lives in your body, that resonance that each of us has with Christmas, whether it's a good resonance or it's that resonance that you think, oh, great, another holiday. So when I think about Christmas, like really think about it, which is what I've done as I wrote this idea for this podcast, my body goes straight back to being a kid, back to when my parents were still together. I grew up in a two-parent household for a while, and there were TV trays that we would eat off for dinner. And I wonder if you even remember a TV tray. We had TV dinners. That's when they first came out with those things. They were before the microwave. And they folded up and they felt very official that we got to eat on TV trays in front of the television for dinner. And it was those same TV trays that we would put cookies and milk on for Santa. It was such joy to make those cookies too. And I believed. I mean, I really believed in Santa. It's when kids still believed in Santa quite quite late in their lives. The night before Christmas was absolute torture. I could not fall asleep, which is funny because here I am decades later, still waking up at 2 or 3 in the morning, unable to sleep. I don't know if that was just an indication of things to come. Nowadays, I wake up wide awake, brain going a million miles an hour. But back then, I was awake because Santa was coming. Now I'm awake because, well, consciousness, I guess, and hormones and life and just my brain being such an active thing. It has so much information in it. And eventually I'd fall asleep. And the morning we'd jump out of our beds and run into the living room. There it was, the tree, the presents. Some were wrapped, some were not. The big ones, like a bicycle or those kind of things, just were sitting there. They weren't wrapped, they were just there. And it was so exciting to go in and see those gifts. The suspense was there, and the surprise was there, and the cookies were gone, and the milk was gone. Proof magic had happened. Here's the thing that really gets me. I don't remember the moment I stopped believing in Santa. Isn't that strange? We remember heartbreak in detail in these moments of our lives. We remember trauma frame by frame by frame. But we don't remember when wonder quietly leaves the room. It just slips out when we're not looking. And somewhere between childhood and adulthood, Christmas changed. It stopped being magic and it started being effort. It started being measurement and comparison. That comparison of who bought the best gift, who spent the most. And I learned and somehow downloaded an idea who proved their love the loudest. And I fell into that trap and I tried to play by what I perceived that playbook was. And I don't remember consciously choosing that belief. I think I just soaked it in. My parents, both of them, have this modeling of the more I can give you or money and the more that they could get because they didn't start out being wealthy. Not that they were wealthy, wealthy, but the more they could give us or give you or their friends, the more they would be loved. And I think I just soaked that up from those money stories and ideas, family patterns. Maybe it was some of the culture, but this idea that if you give enough in presence and financially, someone will finally approve of you or love you more. Someone will finally like me. So I did what a lot of women do because they're busy. I wasn't that person that would start shopping in October for Christmas gifts and plan it and pick something up throughout the year as you saw something that someone would love or like. I waited until the very last minute. I rushed through the malls. I panicked, and it didn't feel joyful. It felt required, felt dutiful. And then there were the family gatherings. So when we were little, it was my Grammy and my Papa. And I have such fond memories of them, and they didn't live that long. I think they died in their mid 60s. And my Grammy was the best cook ever. And I say that I got that from her because I could just whip anything out of nothing. No contest. They passed. My parents divorced. I think that's why my brother still recreates holiday meals like my grandmother used to make, exactly the same way, as if to reminisce that nostalgia, which I think nostalgia can be updated. I mean, let's be honest, green bean casserole with canned soup is not exactly a wellness protocol these days. But things shifted. My parents got divorced, family split up, we grew up, and that food does hold a memory and it holds safety. And I think food and safety became my sense of belonging, and it was my first drug of choice. As we grieve these losses in our life, whether it be your divorced parents or the family splintering, grief certainly doesn't care about macros when it comes to food. So time did what time always does. Grandparents died, parents divorced, siblings got married, they created their own families. And I, on my solo path, I don't regret any of it. And I feel like sometimes I've called myself this many times over many decades. I am the black sheep. I didn't get married. I didn't have kids. I'm a 8 on the Enneagram, so I am the challenger. I am the contrarian. And holidays became complicated. And I've had many Christmases that I don't talk about. I don't even know that I remember them so clearly, other than I do remember a few that my family had basically excommunicated me, which I don't blame them in any way. And these Christmases that I was in my full blown drug addiction, I had no money. Family wasn't talking to me. Christmases were the only thing I ate was dollar store cookies because nothing else was open. And that's what I could afford. Sadly, I had spent everything on drugs. And you just don't put those Christmases you just don't put those Christmases on social media. I don't even think we had social media back then. But they count. They're part of who I am. They're part of my Christmas experience. And they were really real when that happened. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, yeah, I've had one of those types of Christmases, I just want to have you hear this very clearly. Even if you're having it now, you're not broken. Life does get better. You are human and you are right where you are supposed to be. So let that land for just a second. Now let's talk about this idea of Christmas itself. I grew up in a Christian household. Went to church with the parents, went to Bible school, joined a group called Youth for Christ out of my high school. It was an organization. And I also grew up because I am a curious person. I am always asking questions. And I don't ask the little questions, I ask the really big questions. And most people find my questions uncomfortable, including myself. And one of the questions I remember asking from very early in my journey of seeking to understand spirituality is, if someone doesn't know about Jesus, are they going to hell? Because I, I heard this phrase that kept saying, you have to accept Jesus as your savior, the way, the truth, and the light. And if you didn't hear about him, were you going to hell? So I could think of all the people in the world as a young woman. I knew there were people that didn't hear the good news and what was going to happen to them. And I couldn't reconcile this God that was so loving, sending people to hell because they just didn't get the memo. They didn't get the email. They didn't get the text, as we say in today's world. And at 16, being involved in this organization called Youth for Christ, I was on a retreat. It was out in the desert in California, and there were these covered wagons, which is kind of odd for California anyways, at this retreat camp center. And I was in this covered wagon by myself. And this camp counselor came in and sexually molested me. This Christian camp counselor. Now, the thing about being in the 70s, we didn't call it sexual molestation. And I didn't think, honestly, that there was anything to understand about it because this is what happens when you're young and things happen to you. You think that they're normal. But I kept getting that same answer to my question. If people that never heard about Jesus would go to hell, the answer was yes. Yes, they'd go to hell. What? That didn't seem right to me. And even at 16, something inside of me just said, that can't be the whole truth because love doesn't threaten, fear does. And putting the fear of God into somebody, I don't believe that at least the God that I understand, or at least I use the term God to describe this universal consciousness, doesn't do that. Because what I understand now is this: Jesus was a man. Jesus of Nazareth was a man, and Christ is consciousness. Christ consciousness, which is what Jesus had, which we all have. He just showed us how to use it. This Christ consciousness is love. And so Jesus came as an example of what we all can do. And one of my favorite verses in the entire Bible is that he said to his disciples, which he's speaking to all of us, is these things I do, and you too can do as well, and even greater. Because what he taught was the Christ consciousness of how to live in that forgiveness, the unity, the oneness. And so my belief is that we struggle with this idea of consciousness because we can't see it. And we are such finite beings as humans. We have to humanize everything, honest to goodness. And there's parts of the Bible that says we are made in the image and likeness of God. And I don't really take that literally as if God looks like us, because consciousness is bigger than that. Conscious is not something you can see. And so we humanize things, we gender it. God is a he. We judge it. And then we actually minimize God by making God look and behave like a human, which even in the story of Jesus, I don't believe that Jesus was perfect. I hear people say he was perfect. I would love to be in a time machine and go back and visit Jesus and say, Jesus, did you have a bad day? Because I don't believe that he was not like us. He was a human being, but he understood the consciousness and how to use it. Because energy doesn't work the way that we have minimized this godness. God is bigger than anything we could ever describe or imagine. It's the universe infinity. It's everything. And so if we're all one and we're just individualized expressions of the one, then God is everything. It's every version of every beingness that you've ever seen. So you can't compartmentalize it. And so Christmas, when you strip it down, it's not about obedience. It's about light. And here's something that just doesn't get talked about enough. I'm a lifelong researcher. I guess I've been in a master's degree of life since my inception. And I don't know that people actually recognize this, but Christmas comes right after, right on the heels of the winter solstice. The Catholic Church, who canonized the book called the Bible, that took some of the stories of his disciples and left some of them out. So you might want to look that bit up, Joseph and the few others. But the Catholic Church were very much deciding that they were going to canonize these books that were all based on the Old Testament and the New Testament and the disciples, but they were using the mythological gods and the goddesses of the Greeks as their foundation because, frankly, they were trying to get everybody under control, truth be told. And they made Christmas, they decided that Christmas would be right after the winter solstice. There was an actual reason for that. To think that nobody in the Christian religion will say that Jesus was born on the 25th of December. I mean, that's a date that they came up with. And here's why. The winter solstice is the darkest day of the entire year. If you know anything about how we revolve around the sun, it's the day that's the shortest day, and it's the darkest day, unless you're on a different hemisphere, of the entire year. And long before Christianity, cultures all over the world, way before Christianity, all over the world celebrated this moment. Why? Why did they celebrate this moment? When we used to, as culture, celebrate nature and the seasons and how the world showed up and the seasons and the rhythms, the days after the winter solstice is the return of the light. So think about it. Jesus is the soul of the light. The Romans called it Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. It's not by mistake that the early Christian church placed the birth of Jesus on December 25th. That was not random, it was symbolic. And the beautiful part about it is light is born again during that time. It's to show us, it's a reflection, it's a celebration that darkness doesn't win. It is a religious thought process, it's a religious adventure. But here's the thing, it's nature. It's how we were born to be on this planet, and no religion has a law on how this should be. It's nature, it's astronomy, it's science. And I'm not here to diminish spirituality because I'm one of the most spiritual people that I know. Because I often say that science and spirituality are two sides of the same coin. It's consciousness doing what it always does, renewing itself. And I also love the 12 days of Christmas. They begin on December 25th. That it's another Christian tradition. And you know that song, on the first day of Christmas, my true love gave to me. And it's 12 days of that. And they were never meant to be frantic. This Christmas idea, these 12 days of Christmas, this Christmas giving, these presents, none of that. All of this is meant to be integration, remembering, remembering who we are, and then slowly anchoring our intentions for this thing called the new year. And it's just a beginning of a cycle, which, by the way, makes way more sense to me than suddenly declaring a new life on January 1st, especially after eating too much sugar, which, trust me, I have been doing way too much and staying up too late. Just saying. So I've been saying and feeling a lot lately that I feel like I'm in the middle of something. Like I'm not on the some crazy left or some crazy right or anywhere in between. I love Christianity. I love the idea of Christianity. I don't really so much love the dogma. And I don't like when Christians, and I never ever have, basically take a superiority viewpoint that this is the only way. Just like I don't want to tell you that my spirituality is your way. I might talk about it from a scientific perspective. I might talk about it from a spirituality perspective, but it's all the same because it is the law of the universe. And there are many, many religions that have this golden thread that run through them, that everything is one. But as much as I love Christianity, I also struggle with it because that moment, as I just said, with so many religions, that belief becomes rigid, it stops being love. Even if that is your messaging, you still have to make room for those people that don't necessarily buy the whole package. I don't. I buy the spirituality part of it, but not the dogma. Because sometimes that dogma feels like it stops being love. And I know so many Christians that live in that love energy that I would never diminish that. But I also understand Christ consciousness. I don't really idolize Jesus. I don't put Jesus in a God position. I put the Christ consciousness exactly, firmly, squarely where it belongs in my heart and how I show up in my life. But I do struggle with any system or religious, political, spiritual that says, believe this way or else. And since I was 16 years old, I have been railing against that one idea. Truth doesn't need force. Truth doesn't need force. History has shown us that. And just because these books were canonized and gospels were removed, and I bet you probably don't even know this, that God used to be a woman, the divine feminine disappeared because it used to be God was she, not he. A lot of things have happened in the history that most people don't pay attention to because they're very focused on where they are at this moment. And the fact is, this planet has been here for millions and millions of years. So I let my mind wander from time to time. I don't know what has happened or what didn't happen or what did happen. Maybe aliens existed. Maybe we are part alien. There's too many unexplained things on our planet that people cannot really understand. Maybe consciousness is ancient beyond comprehension. I believe that. It's there's no beginning, there's no end. And God knows I don't know anything or everything. I just can see what my map is allowing in and try to make some sense out of it. But I do know one thing, that if you always come from love and you always come from oneness, you can't go wrong. No single tradition owns truth. No single tradition owns truth because they all point to the same thing. And that's the research that I did very, very early in my 20s. I studied every spiritual tradition I could find, and there was one overriding golden thread through all of it: oneness. That's it. That's the whole thing. If we can embody that oneness and that love, nothing can hurt us. Nothing can destroy us. And the fact of the matter is if you definitely believe that we are eternal, and I know there's atheists out there, and I don't know how they believe that this is the end all be all. There's too much magic going on. There's too much science that says there's multi dimensions and there's more than this. But it's all the same. It's oneness. So I feel like the planet is at a pivot point. It feels like it's political. Yeah, I don't know. That's a story that people are telling. I think it's spiritually. I think people are reconciling how they show up. What is the meaning of life? It's really being questioned in a deep, deep way. And I think the Gen Zs of today are me back in 1970, really asking this question. Why are we living in fear? Why are we comparing ourselves? What is the truth of who I am? Do I have any say so in what's happening? And I want to say that every tradition agrees on this. You are a co-creator of this life. You are a divine expression of the one. No matter how you manifest that in form, in a spiritual tradition or religion or political conversation, you get to decide how you want to show up every single day. Do you want to show up in love or do you want to show up in fear? Really, those are your only two choices. There's not a middle ground. Freedom and the pursuit of happiness are inalienable rights, as our Declaration of Independence says. Those are not political ideas. Those old guys, those old white guys in wigs, they really did kind of understand the program. Now, listen, this is a masculine enterprise that's been going on for 2,000 years with the canonization of the Bible. But the fact is freedom and the pursuit of happiness is not governed by government. It is your inheritance that you are born with into this expression called earth. They are spiritual universal truths, and they are available to every single being, every single moment of every single day. Not because someone says you can have them. No matter where you are in this world, no matter how oppressed you are, you still have that in your heart and that desire to make choice of your own. And it's only because you remember who you are. And when you forget, it does feel like fear and depression. Because here's the thing, nobody can really harm you. You're just a physical being on this planet called Earth, a spiritual being having a human experience. So, this Christmas, whether you celebrate Jesus or the solstice or some other tradition, the fact that you made it through another year, please remember this. Your truth doesn't have to be my truth, and my truth doesn't cancel out your truth. There is no separateness to us. There is no daylight between us if we are one, which we are. So when I'm looking at another being, I'm looking into the eyes of God. And if we could remember that, if we could connect with that, we don't have this separateness, this duality that is the yin and the yang of this world. We need light and dark to understand each other's version of it. But if you stay in one or the other, you do not only yourself a disservice, but the entire universe. So there is no separateness. There's only different expressions and learnings and love. And we're all just finding it again. I believe that 2026 is going to be this enlightenment year that says, I see you. The God in me sees and recognizes the God in you. So, in this celebration of the winter solstice, the 25th of December, may you feel the light returning. That is the essence of this. It isn't presents, it isn't Christmas trees, it isn't Santa. All of those are fun, beautiful, green and red, everything. But the light returning, it's not just in the sky. It's in your body. It's in your soul. It's in our consciousness. It's in our world and our universe. The light is returning in a way that, to me, I have been waiting my whole life for it to shine this brightly. So I wish you a very Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, or anything you celebrate. I do love the winter solstice because it is nature. It is our nature. We are at our core primal beings. We have all these AI and electronics, and I use all of them. But at the end of the day, We are nature. So embrace your essence of who you truly are, and that is the oneness. And you are, each and every one of you, a unique expression of the one. And it is your uniqueness that is needed, that is vital to the whole of who we are on this thing called planet Earth. Merry Christmas.